Hi, my name is Skylar Hollister, and this is my presentation on Module 5 and current issues in education. I am presenting on why teachers are the most important factor in student academic achievement. I wanted to start off my presentation with this quote from Maya Angelou that says, "This is the value of the teacher who looks at a face and says there's something behind that, and I want to reach that person. I want to influence that person. I want to encourage that person. I want to enrich. I want to call out that person who is behind that face, behind that color, behind that language, behind that tradition, behind that culture. I believe you can do it. I know what was done for me." I just felt that this really speaks to the lengths at which teachers want to reach their students and want to see them succeed. I feel that teachers are definitely gardeners, if you will, of the students, to tend to them, to cause them to grow, to enrich them. So, starting on the presentation, I wanted for all of us to reflect before my overview and to kind of dive into the overview. And I wanted us to reflect on when we thought about our success as a student, when you think about your past in learning environments. We all tend to have one teacher, or maybe even a professor, if it was in college for you, who may have contributed to your drive and to your hunger as a student. A homeroom teacher, maybe a professor. Like for example, for me, I always loved my German teachers, mostly because I loved the topic of German, and these teachers who taught me German just had so much more to contribute to my love of German. And any other teacher that brought you joy in your learning experience, I would say, and I think it's mutually thought of to be someone as contributing to your education as a whole. Teachers are the most important factor in student achievement, noting that if student success is the goal of education, quality teaching is the means by which that goal is achieved. So I think that's pretty straightforward as far as we look at if you have a good teacher, it's more likely that you will get a good student, a student that's thriving. So in our overview, successful teachers contribute to successful students, meaning teachers are there to ensure the success of their students, and having a well-educated teacher, or even just a teacher who's passionate about what they're doing, will result in a successful student. The finding that teachers' verbal skills appear to be predictive of student achievement is consistent with later reviews of the factors predicting student achievement, and with evidence from the last decade showing that teachers' licensure tests scores are also predictive of achievement. So basically what we're saying here is that teachers who are well spoken and who are well educated and are basically into what they want to do, love their jobs, and have educated themselves in their jobs, will contribute to then students doing well as well. And this is not only indicative of a teacher ensuring a student's success, but also the teacher's influence through their words and overall characteristics as a person in guiding the student to said success. So if we have a well-spoken, charismatic teacher who is well versed in their topic, we are going to see the success in the student as well, because we're going to see a teacher who knows very in a well-rounded manner how to convey their message, their education points to their students. And their students are going to be able to absorb that. Excuse me. Moving on. Looking at a background of perspectives, I wanted to start by looking at, yes, teachers make a difference. We're looking at the pros, basically, of this perspective of teachers influencing academic achievement. So we have this quote here that teachers who help students improve non-cognitive skills such as self-regulation raise their grades and likelihood of graduating from high school more than teachers who help them that improve their standardized test scores. That's from Tirada in 2019. So once again, that's implying that a teacher's general influence carries throughout the aspects throughout all the aspects of a student's development. So we're not just looking at black and white test scores, because we know that a lot, if not most, teachers resent test scores and standardized testings. We're seeing here that a teacher can help a student become a well-rounded individual, as well as absorbing the things that they need to in the classroom environment. So I know that we are remaining in the last 5 years as far as our references go, but it is always important to bring up the Coleman study, which was over 50 years ago, that was a study that decided to see how teachers were directly influencing students, and looked into that on a data perspective of how that was happening. And so I found a source that referenced the Coleman study, saying that it continues to be relevant today. And Goldhaber stated that the finding that teacher quality is one of the few school characteristics that significantly affects student performance is still consistent with more recent research. So we're just seeing that what they found 50 years ago is still relevant today. We're seeing that teachers still affect how much their students absorb and how well their students do academically in their achievements. Overall, the findings state that a teacher that is well educated and well prepared to teach will positively influence their students and leave an impression upon them that can ignite and incentivize learning. So now we're looking at the other backgrounds of perspective. So this one's leaning more towards no. Outside influence affect a student's education more so than those inside the schoolhouse. So we're looking at the fact that a large amount of researchers believe that ultimately the home environment is what fuels a student to do well in school. So we're talking about family and maybe friends that are what influence a student to either do well or not do well. Research has focused predominantly on how teachers affect students' achievement on tests, despite evidence that a broad range of attitudes and behaviors are equally important to their long-term success. So we're seeing here that like a broad range of attitudes and behaviors, being those that perhaps are brought from home, are brought from upbringing, are also what contribute to long-term success. Meaning upbringing, meaning how we teach our students to focus in the household before we send them off to school environments. And so parental and familial influence has always been a huge aspect of a child's development, whether it be outside just in the world, going out to the store, or whether it be in a school environment, because these affect self-esteem and focus and how they behave in the schools. So ultimately, I think a big question is, how can we tell how effective a student is in their academic achievements? Because evidence based on testing scores can be imprecise, according to Opper, and teachers, may not be doing their best job because they're in a new district or new to their job, so that can affect those testing scores and not necessarily reflect how well or how poorly a teacher is doing, just perhaps that they have their training wheels on. We also can tell how well teachers do with their students as it's based on their success themselves, taking into consideration their personal education, whether that be degrees, college experience, or life experience. So a teacher that's fueled well from their background can fuel students. So that also influences teachers' influence on academic achievement. And a student's academic achievement can vary dependent on the viewer's opinion of what academic achievement is. So are we talking about standardized testing scores? Are we talking about how charismatic they are in a certain setting, or how they speak in front of an audience? It really just depends on what academic achievement is. So looking at a specific opposing viewpoint. There's a debate around whether teachers make a difference in academic achievement based on specifically the testing scores, and whether they are definitive marks of whether a teacher has made a lasting educational impact. And the question here is whether a test score is a representation of a good teacher. Is a teacher failing their students if they go into a 3-hour testing period where, you only get 5-minute breaks between the different topics? If a student flops that, is that reflective of how this teacher has imprinted on their student? Here we have a quote from Blazar and Kraft 2017 that says teachers who are effective at improving test scores often are not equally effective at improving students' attitudes and behaviors. So here we kind of have both sides of the fence. Um, Maybe teachers that improve the test scores and have students that are doing great on the testing, maybe they're not the most well-mannered students, and then maybe vice versa. I think that's kind of a conflicting issue that we have here when talking about teachers and their impact on academic achievement. Additionally, with this viewpoint, when we're looking at the cause of academic achievement in students, we find this blurred point, because when we're looking at the aspect of teaching and learning, it's multidimensional. There's no yes or no answer, because once again, touching on Blazer and Kraft, we see that a substantial body of evidence indicates that student learning is multidimensional, with many factors beyond their core academic knowledge as important contributors to both short and long-term success. So basically what we're saying here is that um, teaching and learning is not just one point. It's that, sorry, teaching and learning is not necessarily just one thing. It's not just, good grades. It's a student overall as a whole. Are they succeeding in their lessons? Are they learning how to carry themselves? Are they doing well amongst their peers? I think there's a whole well-rounded um, concept that we need to be looking at when we're looking at achievement in an academic environment. I don't think it's as black and white as testing scores or good grades. I think there's a whole thing that we should be looking at here as far as self-confidence and how they carry themselves when in a learning environment, when around peers, and that they are also understanding their topics and understanding what's going on. So personally, from my perspective, I love teachers. I think they have a huge influence on how their students do. I think some are greater than others. I think some connect better with their students. I think that's a chemistry thing. My heart personally smiles upon some of my teachers that I've spent time with. They're the ones that made me want to feel great, that inspired me to do well, that inspired me to move on and learn more about the topic or other topics. Um, for example, my human anatomy teacher in high school inspired me to do nursing when I was younger, and at that point in my life, that was huge for me that he pushed me that much. So teachers inspire, improve, love, support, push, and grow their students. And I think that the right teacher with the right student can cause a magnitude of drive and learning. So once again here we're talking about chemistry, and we're talking about teachers who care and love and are passionate enough about what they do to want to drive all their students equally. So that's the end of my presentation. Here is my reference list, and thank you so much for having me, and I hope this was educational. Have a great night.